This box says you can make 3 Troggoths with it, but to me that sounds more like a challenge. With some kit bashing, sculpting, and creative problem solving, I think we can double that amount. In this house, we make cheap armies. Welcome to Goblins. For those of you who are new here, I'm Niche and I'm making a completely custom old world army set in an original world called Goblins, a world of only goblins. And in this video, I want to teach you how to get more out of your GW sprues. When undergoing a project like this, there are 3 things I like to keep in mind: creativity, money, and time. This project maximizes creativity and will save you money, but it does take more time. For me, this is perfect because I'm cheap, I want my models to be as unique as possible, and my time is worthless. When I first got my hands on these sprues, the first thing I wanted to make was a bridge troll. A troll that literally ripped the bridge it was guarding from the earth and took it into battle. I used a whole model for this, I just reposed the hands and feet to better accommodate this idea. Then I gave him a wet mullet and some fishy features to look more like a troll that would be guarding a river. Besides making this bridge entirely from scratch, this really didn't take much time at all, but it did take up a lot of parts. I made this before I knew I was going to be making this video. I think it's useful to see a way to use sprues in a creative way that doesn't necessarily involve a bunch of kit bashing or sculpting. 1 troll down. This box, like a lot of other boxes, comes with a lot of extra heads and arms, but only 3 sets of legs. This is the main thing that holds people back from using all of the bits on their sprues. If you have the means, you could mold and cast the legs from this kit yourself to get some extras, but most of us don't know how to do that, and it's time-consuming, difficult, and expensive. The most obvious way to get more legs, to me, is to sculpt them yourself. I know sculpting like this can be intimidating, but I'm going to break down my process and show you how I do it. But first, I'm going to teach you a lesson from art school. In the one Intro to Sculpting course I took in art school, we had a lesson on representational sculpting. The assignment was to bring in a toy or interesting object and recreate that object with wire. So I started trying to recreate the toy dinosaur I brought in with wire. The teacher comes over to me, she points at the toy, she points at my sculpture, she says, "Does that look like that?" I look down, I say, "Well, no, I guess the proportions are slightly off." She goes, "Start over." Start over is what she said to me, and what she said to pretty much everybody. What she was trying to get us to do was to make something right. If you can't accurately recreate an object that's right in front of you, you're not going to accurately or successfully achieve your own ideas or recreate your designs physically. I think about this lesson all the time when I'm making stuff. If it doesn't look good, I know I can just fix it. This doesn't mean starting from scratch every single time you mess up, but it means fixing mistakes when they're happening. It means achieving the goal you set out to do. Copying other artists' work is not always a bad thing. It is a real technique that artists use to get better. So for this project, I'm trying to recreate the Troggoth legs as closely as I possibly can, both to help you, but also to help myself get better. So to start out the sculpt, I make an armature wire skeleton. I'm using the cheapest wire possible for this. It does not have to be fancy. You do not need to go out and buy real armature wire. I am using cheap dollar store wire for this. I am comparing the armature right up against the legs I am trying to recreate. If your proportions are off in your armature, they will be off in your sculpt. It is worthwhile to spend the time to do this right. Next, you want to bulk out your form. The most common way to do this is with aluminum foil, but you can also use hot glue. Make sure you don't add too much bulk at this stage because it's going to make it a little more difficult to sculpt later on. A good piece of advice when making detailed sculpts is to sculpt in small batches. If you sculpt both legs in their entirety in one go, you're probably going to mess up some of the proportions and you're not going to hone in on those fine details as much. I started by sculpting the feet with no toes, and I used green stuff so I could hone in on all of those little fine details like the veins on the top of the foot. Next, I sculpted the legs with milliput. I chose milliput here because it's great for getting nice, smooth shapes, and I knew I was going to be sculpting the rocky scale details later with green stuff. As I was sculpting, the legs got bigger and thicker and strayed too far away from the model, so I cut them right down, started over, and made sure that they were as accurate as I could possibly make them. I think this is a really good exercise for sculpting. You've got an object that you can directly reference to get scale proportions that you can move around in 3-dimensional space. Plus, if you mess up and it's not perfect, you can still use it. You can hide a lot of your sculpting mistakes with extra bits. Add a bunch of little objects to the Troggoth's belt. Or if your feet are looking a little off, you can throw the model onto a nice muddy base. You can put plants or rocks or other objects on the base to hide some of your less than good sculpting. So keep your bad sculpts, try again, and you'll just get better and better. And not just at sculpting legs, those skills will directly transfer to sculpt anything you want. Once the milliput on my model was dry, I shaved down any rough bits to make a nice smooth surface, and then I sculpted the extra details on top with green stuff. My legs did end up a little bit bigger than the original, but they're pretty darn close, and with a decent paint job, I think it would be hard to spot the difference. But my brain is broken and I hate seeing two things that look almost exactly the same, so let's make this model unique. A while ago I sculpted new faces onto my WizKids Dire Troll, but this model is too big to use in my army, so I'm just going to cut off the heads and use it here. A two-headed troll is classic, and since this kit came with some left-handed weapons and some right-handed weapons, I thought it would be funny to give this monster two weapons. These trolls definitely each control one arm and definitely use these weapons to beat each other up. That's two trolls down, but that was way too much work. For the next model, we're going to cheat a little bit, find ways to sculpt less. Let's go. I've had these sprues for a while now, but despite my perfect organizational system, I definitely lost some of the bits, including a full set of legs. I have a distinct memory of taking a container labeled troll bits and dumping it out somewhere to fill it with dirt. I have no idea where I dumped out these bits. I'm sure I'll find them eventually. But in the meantime, I'm just going to have to do even more creative problem solving. So for this next troll, I'm not going to use a full set of legs, I'm just going to use the feet.
What about their legs?
I'm just going to use the feet. Instead of having to sculpt a full set of legs and torso, I'm going to get a little creative. This troll is going to be wearing a barrel. This is loosely based on one of my OCs, Feral Errol the Bugbear Barrel-Wearing Bear Barbarian. I thought a troll wearing a barrel was hilarious, and a great way to avoid sculpting the parts that I don't want to. But to make this choice feel intentional and not just lazy, I decided to give the troll a whole barrel theme. I want this troll to be holding an explosive barrel over his head, but unfortunately I only had one barrel in my bits box, so I'm gonna have to make a second one the old-fashioned way, meaning out of junk and coffee stir sticks.
Do a barrel tutorial!
I glued together two junk lids and then thickened the middle with a bit of plastic. This will create the iconic barrel shape. Then I wetted some coffee stir sticks to make them more bendable, and then glued them onto the junk plastic. Then I trimmed away the excess coffee stir sticks with my rotary tool and glued in a piece of junk plastic to look like metal banding. Done. It was a little tricky to glue in the hands and arms in the right position to look like it was holding the barrel, but with a little finagling I got it looking pretty good. Now watch me struggle to glue the legs in place. Instead of sculpting my own head from scratch this time, I decided to use one of the extra heads from the kit. But I wanted him to look a little crazier, so I widened the jaw, and I sculpted him a crazy wide eye. Using the same junk coffee stir technique, I made him a little barrel lid hat. This guy definitely thinks that wearing this barrel will protect him from the explosion. To fill in all the gaps and sculpt the remainder of the leg that's visible under the barrel, I used milliput. But I didn't sculpt any details onto the legs because there's enough going on visually to distract the eye. That's 3 trolls down. Kit bashing is a great way to hide the parts you don't want to sculpt, or to hide the parts that you did sculpt that didn't turn out so good. You could use armor bits from other kits to look like scavenged armor that the troll started wearing, or fabric from other kits to cover some of your bad sculpting. But what if you don't have any GW bits? What if you don't have any bits at all? Then it's time to go to the dollar store. On my most recent trip to the dollar store, I found this choice Triceratops toy, and it's going to make an excellent troll. That's right, Trollceratops. So I cut off the dino feet and I attached them to an armature wire skeleton like I did with the last troll. But before I started sculpting the legs, I attached the armature wire skeleton to the GW arms and chest. I know I said I wasn't going to use Extra Games Workshop bits for this troll, but I found this dinosaur skull and I thought it would be really cool if I attached that dinosaur skull to this awesome hammer. It's so sick. This makes it look like this troll dinosaur fought off an even bigger dinosaur and anointed its hammer with the skull of its fallen foe. This just really sells the dinosaur theme of the troll, and I guess it also means that there are dinosaurs in Goblins.
It's a dinosaur.
The head of this Triceratops toy was a bit too big, so I trimmed away all the parts I didn't need. I also trimmed away bits to make it look a bit more humanoid.
Go on.
I'm very strong. Also, to make it fit more cohesively with the rest of the trolls, I took one of the lower jaws that this kit comes with and I glued that onto the dinosaur toy head. For me, one of the most iconic parts of a Triceratops are the big, intimidating horns, so I found some from another kit and I glued those in place. This gives me the vague silhouette of the head, but I'm going to leave it there for now and work on the rest of the body to make sure the whole model is cohesive. I sculpted the thighs and body with milliput again, and I knew because it had such chonky feet, and because he's a dinosaur, that this boy was gonna be thick. Once I was happy with the sculpt, I did a hot glue test fit of the head and the tail from another dinosaur toy. The head is still really big on this model, so I think the tail kind of helps balance out the silhouette. I was really happy with the silhouette overall, so I took the head off so that I could more easily sculpt the face details with some green stuff. I prefer using green stuff over milliput for sculpting details because it holds its shape better and you can get much finer details. Green stuff is a weird material and does take a lot of practice to get good with. I taught the basics of how I use green stuff on a stream, and the VOD of that stream is available to my patrons. If you're getting into sculpting or kit bashing and you want to ask me some questions, I will happily answer any and all questions over on Patreon. With those final green stuff details in place, Troll 4 is done. At this point, I've used a lot of bits. What do I have left? Actually, I have almost a full model that's just missing the feet. So what am I going to do with that? I am going to use basically all the techniques we have learned thus far. I'm going to sculpt a leg. I'm going to avoid sculpting a second leg with some clever kit bashing. I think it would be really cool if this guy had a peg leg. So I went looking through my bits box, trying to find a piece that would look good as a peg leg, and I found this awesome piece that had some really cool details on it, but any piece of wood would have worked realistically. So I trimmed away all the bits I didn't need and I glued the peg leg in place. This did make him a little taller than the other trolls, but I think that that's good. To me, Games Workshop kits have a bit of a clone problem. I personally don't want 20 orcs that look like they're basically clones of each other. I don't want 3 Troggoths that look exactly the same. I want each individual unit in my army to look like its own character. This for sure comes with its own challenges, but I think it's kind of the charm and fun of my army. To sculpt the other leg, I'm basically using the same techniques that I've used before. Armature wire, bulking it out, milliput. You've seen it before, I'm not going to show you again. The silhouette of this troll ended up looking way more powerful and intimidating than I intended. So I wanted to give it a really intimidating head. But to do that, we're going to have to make one ourselves. I started by cutting off the lower jaw of this boar. It had great troll-like tusks already in place. I then made an aluminum foil skull and glued on these sick horns from a Chaos Knight. To tie it back to the Troggoths, I gave it ears from the kit, and then I sculpted the rest of the face myself. He definitely ended up a lot cuter than I was intending, not super intimidating, but he definitely has a ton of character. So in total, that is 5 trolls out of this kit. Not quite double, but I'm confident if I ever find those legs, I could definitely make a 6th one. Before starting this channel, I'd only ever bought a few cheap WizKid models. But one day I saw a picture of the Dankhold Troggoth, and I thought, here is a model that I love and I'm willing to spend a little extra money on to have it, and then I saw that it was $100. I could not fathom why one model would be $100 until I realized that it was the sprues. It is all the extra parts that make these models so expensive. And that really turned me off of Warhammer for years. To be fair, I still have not bought a single Games Workshop kit. This kit was sent to me by my friend Fiverr. Now that I know what I'm able to accomplish with one of these kits, maybe I'll buy one. Probably not though. But if you have sprues with extra bits on them and you want to donate them to Goblins, hit me up. I am aiming to make one of the cheapest Warhammer armies of all time, and so far I am definitely succeeding. In my next video, I will show you how to design and sculpt your own troll completely from scratch, and I'm going to be going into some Goblins lore, so subscribe and stay tuned for that. Please leave a like on the video and comment down below what you think I should name these trolls, or just tell me how I'm ruining the hobby. As always, let me know what you'd like to see me make next time. Bye.